Okay. Okay. Hello and welcome to Man v Fat Live. This is the first ever Man v Fat webinar. My name's Emma, I'm your host, and I'll be live on YouTube every month with a weight loss expert who will answer your burning questions about losing weight. This month's guest is Tom Irving, who is a qualified dietitian and performance nutritionist at Ipswich Town Football Club. And you might also recognise him as a Man v Fat football coach, or you might have seen him on the forum as our Man v Fat dietitian. He's got the honour of being our first guest, and he really knows his stuff, so this is going to be good, I think. So we're going to talk about how what you eat can affect your performance on the pitch, for better or for worse. We're going to get to the bottom of some nutritional myths, and we're going to answer your questions as well. So ask us any questions that you've got using the chat box to the right, and we will try and answer all of them. And if you ask us a question, you'll be put into a draw to win this Man v Fat book, which is a great book. And I'm not just saying that because we wrote it. It's got everything you need to kickstart your weight loss. So let's say hi to our first guest. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good evening. I'm very well. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you. Shall we chat a bit about what you do first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds very interesting. Performance nutritionist. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, it's a mixture actually. Qualified dietitian, performance nutritionist. They're unique in the sense of performance is generally sport nutrition, but performance can obviously relate to life in general in terms of just feeling better within yourself, working better at work, better mental acuity, you know, all that sort of thing. So performance nutrition is more sport related, and then the dietitian element is more clinical. So it's looking at, so I conducted obesity clinics in the NHS. I had my own gastrointestinal clinic. I had oncology clinics. I worked on the oncology wards. I did, you know, so working with cancer, diabetes, all that sort of thing. So it's, yeah, it's a mixed bag, but I hope it's given me a holistic understanding of the whole sort of nutrition story, you know. And I think it lends itself quite nicely to Man v Fat, because obviously men who are a little bit overweight have a clinical issue they need to perhaps address or think about addressing. And also there's a performance element. They want to do well when they play on a Friday, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's
so Friday in my league, I should say, whatever day their league is.
Yeah. And it's all tied in, isn't it? So what you eat can really affect your performance on the pitch.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. So how exactly can it slow you down if you eat the wrong things?
In terms of, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, you froze and I couldn't hear anything. So.
I think we're back now. I was just asking how, if you eat the wrong things, how can it slow you down on the pitch?
Well, on the pitch, in life, let's look at it holistically in general, in life in general. If you eat the wrong thing, you know, your body has its own unique kryptonite. There is no one diet for, you know, anybody. Not everybody is the same in terms of how you respond to food. So I wish I could eat avocados. I love them, but it upsets my stomach and it makes me feel lethargic. And I suppose that's a slight intolerance I have of avocado. So I know already that I should steer clear of avocados, which is a bugger because they're extremely good for you, monounsaturated fats and all of that. So guys, eat it, please. But that's me. There's other people who can't eat peppers and nightshade foods because they have this layer on the outside, a waxy layer on the outside, which is a toxin. Now, the food itself is really good for you, but some people have adverse reactions to the toxin on the outside, and it causes irritation in the joints. It can make you feel like you've got arthritis. And yeah, I'm lethargic. But let's look at it more generally. Foods to avoid, but foods to steer clear of in the build up to food. Things that are going to sit heavy in meats, fatty meats. You've frozen here, Em. I hope you're still there.
Yeah, I think I'm talking to myself.
Are you still there? There you move. There you go. But protein, fatty meats, vegetables are probably best to really healthy and you've got to eat vegetables, but in the 2 to 3 hours, 1.5, 2 hours maybe, before you're going to play football, don't be getting veg down. It will sit heavily, it will ferment, it will cause bloating, distension, particularly if you've got an irritable bowel underlying issue. And so, yeah, so be aware of things that are going to sit heavy in your stomach. Keep the meals small before you play, but things to avoid specifically, look, you've got to steer clear of these refined sugars. Sugars which are man-made, they're known as free sugars. They're not to be eaten freely, but they're called free sugars. Basically the man-made processed crap that we all know and love, unfortunately. Don't eat that stuff. It's readily broken down. It gives you a spike in energy, and you get a compensatory drop in energy, which makes you feel sluggish and lethargic. Now, by all means, if you're feeling sluggish and lethargic before you play, because you've not eaten properly in the day building up to it, then by all means have a high glycemic index, a quick releasing carbohydrate. Dark chocolate you can have, a banana, something which you know your stomach tolerates. Some people can't tolerate things like an apple because of the skin and that sort of thing. It's quite fibrous. But anyway, that's a long-winded. Are there other things? I think high caffeinated drinks are probably something to limit. Caffeine's a brilliant ergogenic aid, as we call it. It's great for energy and reducing perceived exertion, so it makes exercise feel easier. But don't be having 2 cans of Monster or Red Bull, because that's close to 300 milligrams of caffeine, and that will make you high, and then it will make you dramatically low. You'll have a crash. So maybe we'll come back there because there's loads. But anyway, that's an idea of things to avoid.
So if you wanted to get a hit of energy before playing your game,
yes,
would it be better to eat? Like how long would you have to leave it before playing? Yeah,
good. I think that's a key thing to look at. It's different with everybody. For example, when I was a teenager, I was eating a Sunday roast and then going and kicking off 3 hours later. That's problematic for a lot of reasons, but you can get away with it when you're younger. Some people are different. Other people would eat that and throw up on the pitch. Sorry if I was eating dinner now, but that's, you know. But how long should you generally leave it? 1 to 2 hours, 60, 90 minutes, around that sort of window before you go out and compete. And then you can sort of how long should you generally leave it? 1 to 2 hours, 60, 90 minutes. I'm hearing myself talk back there.
Sorry, we've got so many technical issues with this. It's the first one that we're allowed to have a bit of issues. Sorry, guys. Oh, I think he's disappeared. Where is he gone? The next one will be polished, I promised.
Oh, you're there. I can see you now.
Okay, are we back?
I've got full Wi-Fi. I'm sure I know you have too.
It's just one of
sorry about that. I'll keep my answers concise. There you go. That's the universal to speed up. It's 1 to 2 hours. If you eat too close to food, to football, you have something known as a preferential shift of blood. And that's where the blood, when you eat, your priority is digestion, because you've got a foreign body in your stomach that the body wants to deal with. And so the blood shifts from your peripheries, even the brain to an extent, not completely, but some of it goes to your stomach from your working muscles to aid digestion. The consequence of that is you lose a little bit of blood around the muscles and the rest of your body and the brain. And that's why sometimes you feel a little bit lethargic, a little bit sluggish, and you feel heavy-legged when you're playing football. And that's the real reason you shouldn't eat too close to exercise. Yes, you don't want to bring it back up, but you don't want to feel lethargic and sluggish. And so, yeah, it's 1 to 2 hours, I would say. Keep the meal light.
So what about when you are actually playing and you feel like you need a bit of energy to get you through it? We've got in the live chat Andrew Shanahan asking whether there's a drink that you could have, Lucozade. Is that something that you could have?
I missed a bit of that because of the connection, but things to have if you're feeling low in energy. Was that the gist of it? Before you play? So during
the match.
During the match.
Yeah.
So keeping health, well-being in mind. You know, we're not. So as you know, I work with the first team at Ipswich Town. What they should have during a game possibly is slightly different to what these guys have in terms of quantity. So if you're sluggish, then during the game, you're gonna have to. You should try not to have anything during the game. Really, it's only half an hour. If you're feeling sluggish, there's possibly something else underlying there that you've just not eaten right in the day. So you're going to have limited benefit from going and getting, say, a couple of bites of a banana or something which is just going to give you that hit, because there's a lot of research. And I went to a sports seminar in Paris for the Tour de France in 2013, and one of the messages there was the mouth rinse. And there was a TV program on the other day talking about carbs, and they actually alluded to that in there. But you've got receptors in the mouth which tells the brain when you eat carbohydrates. There's no absorption site, so you can't absorb carbs in the mouth, but your brain thinks it's going to get a hit of carbohydrates. So what you do is you rinse the isotonic drink around in your mouth and spit it out, and you still get this ergogenic, energetic boost because the brain's allowed you to liberate more glycogen, stored glucose, for energy. So you haven't taken on any more glucose or any more calories, but you still get that benefit. And that's a little trick to stop getting the, it's a bit of a waste. Hey, let's not worry about that. But otherwise, keep it quite light. Actually, in those times, if you're feeling really lethargic, it's not going to hurt you to have your little handful of Haribo or something like that, dare I say it. I don't want to encourage people to do that, because if you do, you get a dopamine release in the prefrontal cortex of the brain here, and then you want more and more sugar later on after that. That's it. You've told the bacteria in your gut that you're getting more sugar, and they're going to tell you to eat more sugar later on. That's where the cravings come from, which actually I think was a question someone had. Anyway, that was my answer to that. You shouldn't have to snack in a 30-minute game, really, if you can help it.
So some of the matches are played quite late. They'll be finishing 9, half 9 at night. What about eating afterwards? Because you don't want to eat too close to bedtime, do you?
Well, that's a good question, yeah. Yes and no. I would argue, if it's going to inhibit your sleep, and a chap did ask about sleep, and we'll come to that, but if it's going to inhibit your sleep because you're going to bed feeling full, bloated, distended, stimulated because you've eaten, then I would argue you should probably not have your large meal. That said, I don't want to deter people from eating food, because you need to eat. Now, there is no such thing as eating later at night, and because you're going to bed and sleeping and not moving, that you're going to store all those calories as fat. That's a myth. That's not true. Okay. Ultimately, if you need to eat, the priority is giving your body the fuel, because the risk of not eating later at night is that you're going to deplete your body and starve it basically of the key micronutrients it needs, and macronutrients, so vitamins, minerals, protein, carbs, and fat. If you deplete your body of that, or you're in a deficit of that for any period of time, then your body's going to get a bit stubborn and going to hang on to body fat. So it could actually go the other way. You could call it that starvation paradox, if you like, where people it's starvation mode, where you reduce calories to such an extent that the bank manager, if you like, your metabolism says, hang on a minute, I'm not spending any more of this cash, fat. I'm going to slow everything down and draw it back. And that's your metabolism down-regulating to accommodate a lack of calories. So I would argue, definitely have a meal after the 9 o'clock game, but keep it light. You have a salad with some lean meat, or a spag bowl or something that's going to sit heavy on your stomach. That's the gist of it.
And what about if we've got a player who asked the question, he has trouble getting to sleep at night, or he's up because his kids are up, or he's like they're ill and he's up and whatever.
Yes.
Finds it really difficult not to dig into the fridge or the cupboards at 3 a.m. And I bet he's not the only one that's going to be doing that. Why do we do it when we're feeling a bit tired, lacking in energy? Is it to try and get that quick energy? Possibly.
I suppose the last thing you want when you're tired and trying to sleep is that hit of energy, in the sense of, but your body, what your conscience and your brain, common sense knows, isn't what your brain's trying to tell you sometimes. So if you're up and about, I think eating at that time of night is a boredom thing as much as anything. You're awake, you're pissed off because you can't sleep. You go downstairs, I need to do something to occupy me because I'm just rolling around in the bed. Shouldn't go there. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is you go downstairs, you try not to disturb anybody, and you just do something. You could knit. Try knitting. That's quite fashionable now in men, apparently.
Therapeutic.
Try knitting instead. But I shouldn't underplay this, because we did discuss there's something called night eating syndrome, and it is a condition, and there's a lot of evidence out there whereby it's known as NES. It's literally, it can be debilitating for people. They get this overwhelming urge to go downstairs and, or, you know, just grab something quick and easy to eat. So it's something which can sabotage people's quality of life, not just because they're eating additional calories. And with this night eating syndrome, people are eating over 50% of their daily calories sometimes around 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. And I mean, that's crazy. It's something you really don't want to be doing, because you just don't enter enough sleep cycles in effect. And that'll roll into the next day. You're tired and lethargic the next day, and you need to, and you need to eat to bring your energy up. So that's perpetuating sort of vicious cycle. So what do you do about it? Well, there's got to be, I could go through all the list of not watching blue lights within the hour before you go to bed, you know, blue backlit screens, that sort of thing. You could de-stress, do some form of, really fashionable now, but some meditation practice or yoga or something like that. But realistically, are people going to have time and the energy? I think you should, if you can. I do sometimes. But reading a book is a great way. Oh, I wish I could read more, but I read 2 pages and that's it, I'm out. But is there something you should turn to when you do have to go and eat? If you are hungry, you're just going to have to dip into something which is going to fill you up. So nut butters are quite good like that. If you're going to have something, go and get a couple of teaspoons of nut butter, organic, Meridian or something like that, Whole Earth. Have a couple of teaspoons. For those with nut allergies, there are some soy alternatives, but they're high in sugar. So what could you go for if you've got a nut allergy? Honestly, there's no real set rule here. Just go for a rice cake with some cream cheese on or something like that. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But what we do tend to go for is quick and convenient. So we're just going to unwrap a cereal bar, worse, dare I say it, a chocolate bar, or, you know, overnight oats. There's a good one. For people who,
also,
yeah,
if you know that you're going to be up because your kids are going to be up and you know that you're going to want to have something, then buy something to have in so you're not tempted to, you know, attack the chocolate.
Exactly. And I'm laughing because it's ironic. Overnight oats, that isn't what it's designed for. You're not supposed to eat them overnight. It's supposed to soften overnight. If you don't know what they are, Google it. It's a tool that I use with the football players because they come away from training absolutely ravenous. And the first thing all of them say to me is I go for cereal with milk, obviously a lot of milk, and then I'll go for a bag of Haribo. They don't now so much, but the new players that come in still might. And yeah, instead of that, batch prep, loads of oats, put in some Greek yogurt or milk, berries, dark chocolate, banana, nut butter in there, whatever you want. There's loads of recipes out there. Leave it overnight, and then you can just dip into that. It's ready-made, batch prepped it, which is a great strategy, batch prepping in advance, as you said. So maybe batch prep some of that to the chap who has the issue with waking up in the night, and then just have a couple of teaspoons. Leave it at that, get back to bed. And don't try to sleep. You tell yourself I'm going to have to sleep. It's the problem with the athletes as well. They say, I've got to sleep. So they're telling themselves, sleep, sleep, sleep. You ain't going to sleep. No. Tell yourself, I must rest. Just lay back, rest, and relax. Take the pressure off yourself. And then eventually, sometimes you just doze off. As opposed to telling yourself you must sleep now. Anyway.
Then it'll just happen. Yeah.
Well, one would hope, yeah.
Yeah. So the next question that we've had from somebody on Twitter was, is it worth counting calories?
Aha. Before I touch on that, and that's a great question, can I just revert back really quickly? Because I think the gentleman did ask whether or not it's the cause of him not losing weight.
Yes.
Yeah? And that's the key question. He's probably, you know, that's the thing he probably wants to know most. Yes, possibly. But only because sleep deprivation increases cortisol, stress increases cortisol, and those two, it's a bit of a double-pronged attack on fat loss in respect to cortisol is good in short term. It helps you get ready for activity and what have you. But if it's sustained and prolonged cortisol, it inhibits lipolysis, which is fat burning. It dramatically slows it down. So there are supplements out there that you can use to bring down cortisol levels, some herbal ones. So if you are going to have them and you're on some form of statin or other drug, be aware of competitive inhibition, which is where these herbal, the use of your pharmaceutical drug. So that's something you want to avoid. But perhaps I'll put a post out on that or answer that in the notes. I don't just want to flippantly throw out these supplements which can reduce cortisol. So yeah, but anyway, it can slow it down, but that doesn't mean to say you're not going to lose weight. If you enter a calorie deficit consistently, thermodynamics dictate that you are going to lose weight at some point. All right. So
you shouldn't give up. You should just keep going.
Absolutely. That's the message. You asked about counting calories, didn't you?
So is it worth counting calories, just paying attention to the numbers, or should we be thinking more about nutrition? Or, you know, like I know in Weight Watchers you don't count points for fruit and veg, you know, but they've still got calories.
Yeah.
What's the best way?
Well, you've raised some great points. So a little rule to remember is that your body doesn't count calories, it counts nutrients. Now, what I mean is, it doesn't care how many calories it's had. It might in the long term, if you've had too low calories for too long, it might downregulate metabolism. But if you're giving your body nutritionally dense foods, you can get, which deliver a lot of vitamins and minerals and protein and that sort of thing. If you're giving it a lot of that food and you're still sort of keeping the calories low, then your body's satisfied. It's not going to tell you need more food and more food because it's happy it's got vitamin B12 for its energy, for the breakdown of the glucose that it needs energy for. It's got the vitamin C, the collagen and your connective tissue and all that sort of thing, and your energy pathways. That's what it's looking to do. It's not bothered whether or not you've got adequate energy necessarily. The brain's got ketones to revert to if it really needs to. That ain't what it's stressed about in this modern era when we've got Tesco's or Sainsbury's or whatever down the road from us. So it's not counting calories. Should you count calories, or should one count calories when it comes to losing weight? I think if you can measure it, well, we know if you can measure it, you can manage it. So you have to have an idea of what you're putting into your body, don't you? So you've got to know. And if you're just blindly and aimlessly going about it, then you're possibly going to struggle, like I just did trying to get that word out. Anyway, I digress. Counting calories, being specific about what does it mean? Are you literally going on the back of the packaging and saying, oh my God, this has got 127 calories? Do not worry about the minutiae, the small stuff. Don't sweat it. Just try and work out what your BMR is. Now, there's tools online, calculators where you can work out what your BMR is, your basal metabolic rate. That's the amount of calories that you need just to maintain upright posture, breathing, making your heart pump. That's pre-activity. So if you're a manual worker, you've still got a lot of calories that you still need to get in to make up, or not a lot of calories, a few calories so that you're entering a larger calorie deficit. That makes sense. So do not obsess over looking at the back of packaging. Plus, if the food you're eating has got a back and it's got an information label on it, it's possible that it's man-made, and therefore you should probably try and be steering clear of that anyway. But for the sake of rices and what have you, just don't worry about it too much. Just have an idea that fist-sized portion of starchy carbohydrates, that's relative. I've got quite small hands, so I have a small portion of carbs, a hand size of lean meats or fish. Have a look at it now. People are probably doing it now. And then the remainder of your plate covered by veg, a mixture of veg, whatever you fancy, really, ideally. If your chances of you eating too many calories are quite slim. So, yeah, I think don't obsess over the calories, but be aware and be mindful of them. MyFitnessPal is a useful tool for that. If you're not familiar with it, have a little look at it. You can document what you're eating.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a tool, and it's just one of the many ways to lose weight. So one of the questions that we got was, is it better to eat very little? Is that a way to lose weight faster? To just eat hardly anything?
Yeah, it is the way to lose weight faster.
But is it a good way?
It is. Yes, if people want to lose weight for a wedding or something like that, then you're going to have to cut calories. There is no, I like to push healthy eating, do it in a sustainable way, yes. But if you're going to pull out and not eat anything, then Fortunately, your energy expenditure is going to exceed your intake, and therefore your body's going to revert to fat stores. However, what you don't have, you haven't earned the right to keep that weight off. So what I mean by that is emotionally, you haven't changed your lifestyle and your routines to maintain that for the long term. And hormonally, you've still got skewed, well, your insulin for a start, that hormone which unlocks your muscles and the organs to allow glucose to go in. Insulin's not working as it should. It's peaking and troughing over the day. Your body's not happy with that. It wants a nice, steady state of blood sugar in order to feel content and happy to liberate fat for energy as opposed to just glucose, the emergency sort of quick fire source of energy. So you need to be aware that yes, calories will, if you cut them quickly, but you're going to revert back and you're going to bounce back. And when you do bounce back, because you can't sustain that lower amount of calories, there's all sorts of underlying biochemistry that's going on there. Hormonal shifts, you name it, electrolyte shifts, basically means that you're just going to rebound when you come back. And people know that, and people are probably thinking, oh, well, if I do, I do. It's so bad for health in terms of systemic inflammation. Peaking and troughing in blood sugars and peaking and troughing in weight over a period of time is extremely inflammatory, and it's bad for the inner lining of your arteries, so atherosclerosis, which is a precursor to heart disease, stroke, all that sort of thing. Inflammation in the joints. It's just not the way to do it. It's dangerous, frankly. So don't do it. Just have a goal. If you are going to do it, for goodness sake, make sure that the food you're eating is nutritionally dense. That's the only thing that's good about Slim Fast. For example, there's loads of others out there. Slim Fast is nutritionally dense. And I've used Slim Fast with some elite athletes, actually, because they were trying to cut some weight, but instead of, well, not trying to cut some weight, instead of trying to increase size. And what you do, actually, is you give them a Slim Fast because it's got all of the RDA of the vitamins and minerals in there, recommended daily allowance, and it gives them everything they need in that 250, 300 ml bottle. And so it's good in that sense. So if you are going to ever cut calories dramatically, for bariatric surgery, for example, some people need to cut calories really quickly to qualify for surgery, then perhaps that's the only time you should really do it. But otherwise, do it over £1 to £2 a week. It's £1 to £2 a week because you can sustain it and maintain it, and your body's doing it at a manageable pace. So there's not going to be any compensatory increase in weight when you start eating normally again. That's the answer to that, I think.
Yeah. So you just need to be aware that if you do it, then yeah, it's not a long-term fix.
It's definitely not a long-term fix, and I could have just said that, but I wanted to give a context to it, because if you give people know that answer, and yet they'll still do it. But if you give a little bit if people understand why it's not the best way to do it, they're more compelled and more likely to not do it. That's what I've found in the past, anyway.
So related to that, Stuart on Facebook asked whether detoxing works. What are your thoughts on detoxing?
It does work. You've got a liver and kidneys which are extremely proficient at that, hopefully. So that's my sort of tongue-in-cheek answer. Your body's pretty damn good through evolution at detoxing itself. However, you can help it. You can facilitate that process by cutting out the man-made crap, the refined sugars in your diet, because E numbers aren't particularly bad, but those E numbers that you get on the back, colorings and all that sort of thing, things you just don't really need in your system, because it wasn't meant to be there in the first place. But oh god, I've lost my train of thought. Where are we going with this? What was the question again specifically? Something just ran past my window. Go on.
Whether detoxing works.
Yeah, well, okay, so you can detox in a number of ways. All right, you can reduce sugar. So one of my programs, and this isn't a plug, but some of my nutrition programs that I would do one-to-one with people, cut out sugar for 4 or 5 days. And it's quite cliche, but the reason you do that is because you want to change the way that your brain responds to things, and you want to help your liver not have to do, in the kidneys, not have to deal with all this refined, man-made, chemically stuff. Okay, so you cut sugar, then you start adding in lots of antioxidant dense, very cliche and very fashionable antioxidants, right? But it's for good reason. Phytonutrients, all of those things that you get from fruit and veg and plant-based foods, and you add them in. Now, one thing people find when they're detoxing, they They drink lots of juices, which are high sugar. Try and keep it veg predominantly if you can. What people find is they suffer with something called toxic hunger. Now, people will always come to you and say, I've got a headache and I cut sugar. I feel really lethargic. And that usually lasts 2 to 3 days. And that's purely because you've got these toxins in your muscles, in your tissue, in your organs. And when you pull out the cause, like this processed trans fatty rubbishy foods, when you pull them out, those toxins start to leach into the blood, and you start to look to get rid of it through the kidneys and whatever else. And that's why you get this sort of dull head, thick head, you know, sort of lethargy. And so you offset that by drinking lots of water, because it cleanses and it helps to flush it out, and by chucking in a lot of this antioxidants, phytonutrient dense foods like fruit and veg. So your body detoxes itself. If you want to help it, then cut out the crap and add in some of these antioxidant, phytonutrient, high fibrous foods. And if you really want to, if somebody's got alcohol-related fatty liver disease, then a chap called Deepak Chopra is, I think, is one of the most influential people in the world right now, in the top 10 or something like that. He is an absolute proponent of filter coffee. Now, filter coffee is one of the most antioxidant dense sources of, well, one of the most dense sources of antioxidants there are. But plus, we drink a shit ton of it, if you'll excuse the term. It actually reverses the damage that you get in the liver from alcohol consumption. So if you do routinely drink alcohol, and it's one of your main causes of your weight gain, for example, address the cause first of all. Let's try and sort that out, because we know it's not great for us, but also offset the damage by having 3 or 4 cups, 4 to 5 possibly cups of good quality filter coffee a day. That's just something to throw in there.
That's good. That's an excuse to eat more or drink more coffee.
It is, but yeah, you know, it's try not to, let's just take alcohol out if we can first of all. But anyway, it's something to think about.
Yeah. So you always see a lot of these detox diets, you know, people selling, I don't know, like aloe vera and stuff to help detox.
Ain't no names, eh?
Yeah. So that you don't really need all that, do you? It's all about keeping it simple at the end of the day.
You don't. You need to spend the money on Man v Fat.
Yes.
Invest it on the things which are going to compel you to eat better, as opposed to, it's like those sort of things about the aloe vera is like trying to polish a car before you've got the engine working properly. Does that make sense? It's really, it's not fixing the root cause. So, and in fact, it's not even doing anything, actually. The only reason you feel like it's cleansing a lot of this stuff with the aloe vera as a point is that effect, you know, go to the loo, and quite dramatically as well. And so that makes you think psychosomatically that, oh, this must be having an effect on me, because you can see something happening. And the truth is it doesn't. You're better off using it topically, putting it on your arms if you've burnt yourself in the sun, or on your head in my case. So yeah, leave those for sure. There's a few out there who have good quality products, but they charge 2 or 3 times more than they need to.
It is crazy.
So leave them, don't use them. Eat properly.
Yeah, there's no magic pill. Eat properly.
They'll have to believe there is.
Yeah. So another question that we just got on YouTube: what supplements do you give to the professional footballers? Is turmeric something that you are into? Turmeric,
did you say?
Yeah, turmeric.
Ah, good stuff. Right, okay. The supplements, right, there's a lot of habitual supplements that we give to the players. Now, with the footballers, you've got to remember that these guys are redlining all the time. So you're driving your M3 BMW, thrashing it to the red line on the dial there every time. Eventually, the engine's going to blow up. These guys are redlining a lot of their day, and they need this stuff because it's difficult to meet their requirements through just nutrition alone. So there's habitual stuff that they have, and then there's supplements which they have as a go-to sort of emergency pack if they're injured, for example. And then those listening, I'm with Ipswich Town. They had a lot of issues with injury, which I suppose doesn't look good on me, but there was a lot of other factors at play. We'll come to that another time maybe. But so day-to-day stuff, they have protein shakes. And protein shakes, if I make this relevant to the guys listening, protein shakes are good for both. They satiate you, protein's filling, and it also maintains lean muscle mass. Now, if you're increasing lean muscle mass, you're going to burn more fat because muscle is metabolically active. It burns calories as we're sitting here now. And the more muscle you have, and some of these guys who can't underneath their additional body fat that they're trying to shift, and so they're burning, they've got a good tool there. So you want to feed it. Now, if you feel hungry and you don't want to snack on something bad, then a protein shake's a great tool. If you exercise, for example, eating late at night, if you finished football at 9 o'clock and you don't want a main meal, get a protein shake. Replenish the muscle, because you don't want to get injured in man fat, because there's a lot of people who get injured. Some don't, but they put on the weight because the activity's stopped and they're pissed off and they're semi-depressed because they can't exercise now and it's sabotaging their goals. So anyway, protein shakes, lean proteins like a whey protein isolate is a good one. If you can't tolerate dairy or what have you, then go for a good quality vegan one. Bulk Powders is a local company to me in Colchester. They do a really good vegan protein. There's lots out there, but that one, they don't taste the best. They're quite gritty. But anyway, there's different ones out there for you. So they certainly have a protein shake. They'll have often 2 a day just to make up for the amount of activity they're doing. They'll have supplements such as electrolyte supplements and glucose supplements. They use iPro, which is a stevia sweetened isotonic drink, basically. It's got glucose in there, and it's and a bit of stevia, which confuses me why it's in there, actually. But you don't need it for the sweetness. But it's in there, probably a unique selling point. And they have that sort of 10 to 15 sips throughout training, every 10 to 15 minutes. That's a good rule. So 8 to 10 sips of an isotonic drink every sort of 10 minutes of Man v Fat wouldn't be a bad thing to do. That said, with Man v Fat, do you need the additional calories? There are ones out there called High 5 Zero, for example, which is 0 carbohydrate, but it delivers the electrolyte, because I see a lot of guys sweating when they're playing. So instead of getting the additional calories, replenish the salt, the sodium, potassium, the chloride that you're losing through sweating. Replace it with these. We don't know if it's science backed yet, but there's a lot of theory that suggests that cramp comes on because of electrolyte imbalances, isn't there? So it's good for that. It's good for replenishing and getting you ready for the next day. They also have something called Cherry Active. And I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, unfortunately. Cherry Active is a incredibly concentrated source of Montmorency cherry, and I can't think what it is exactly. It's about 10 times the amount of antioxidants as an orange, for example, and that's massive. So they have that. It's got really, really strong anti-inflammatory properties. So it's mainly designed to stop the joints from hurting, to stop the joints from flaring up, and to maintain the integrity of the connective tissue around the knees and what have you. So Cherry Active is a really good one that they have. They'll be on a multivitamin sometimes, and the general public can consume these too, especially the guys. When I see them, they'll put pictures on the WhatsApp group, and it's great. There's salad with chicken there, but they're having that every day. There's Ryvita with a little bit of something on it, they're having that for lunch. Chances are over time they're chronically deficient in something because it's not varied. It needs to be varied. So a multivitamin in that case could help them. And what else are we looking at in terms of supplements? Creatine. Creatine is arguably the most effective supplement, apart from about 20% of the population who don't respond. But the remainder, it's hugely beneficial to athletes in particular. It's your muscle's own unique energy source, basically. So it's not poached and nicked by the rest of the body, apart from the brain if it really needs to. So creatine is effective, and actually creatine is now often being prescribed or recommended to the elderly, because age-related sarcopenia, basically gradual muscle breakdown after the age of 40 to 45, is something that my phone's just gone off because the thing, it obviously thought when I said sarcopenia that I said Siri, there you go, it's done it again. It's flashing up thinking, sorry, it is off, it's on silent. Age-related sarcopenia is gradual muscle breakdown. It's something you want to stop, and that's why you see a lot of frail elderly people out there. So creatine is actually really good at offsetting sarcopenia. But look into it first. Start at 0.1 grams per kilogram of your body weight. But remember that a lot of the guys in Man v Fat are heavier than they should be, so you might want to reduce that down. 5 grams is a good place to start. Just be mindful of that. Anyway, there's loads, and it's different depending on the athlete.
Yeah. So speaking of multivitamins, yes. Craig is asking, he said that the body can't process most of a multivitamin because the quantities are so high. So you often see them, they've got like 1,000% of your RDA.
Yeah, so it's an expensive piss, basically.
Yeah.
There's an element of truth to that. And there's also some recent research, and I mean recent, in the last few months, that says in excess of 100% of the RDA of vitamin B12, something we thought you couldn't have too much of, could increase the risk of lung cancer or lung disease. And so there are a lot of supplements out there with certain vitamin, and actually a lot of people just can't absorb vitamin B12 and they need an injection. So some people are chronically deficient in B12 and they have to have monthly or quarterly injections of B12. Anyway, whoever that is absolutely right. Some of them are too high, and that's why I'm there, because I know the ones which aren't too high and I know the ones which, but it's good that he's mentioning it.
Yeah.
However, you could try and be a bit of a biohacker and a bit of a hacker and buy individual vitamins and minerals if you like. The main ones I have, in fact, one of the only ones I really have. Oh, you said turmeric. Turmeric's one I have, but make sure it's either liposomal, so covered in a sort of capsule which is fatty based, because it's fat soluble. You won't absorb the curcumin, which is the active compound in turmeric. That turmeric's great. It's got, you know, vitamins and what have you in there, minerals, but it has the curcumin, the health promoting component of it, is useless if it's not combined either with fat or with something called bioperine, which is black pepper extract. You can't absorb it without that. So make sure that the one you're getting is with bioperine. Also be mindful that bioperine is a competitive inhibitor, which I mentioned earlier, with some pharmaceuticals, some drugs out there, which you might have to take for health. So just that's something to consider. Again, Google it, look at it, make sure it's from a robust source, or send me a message. But turmeric is great. Vitamin D. Now, I could just sneak on examine.com here and pull the wool over everybody's eyes. I'm not going to lie. I think it's about 10. It's international units they measure it in. I can't think what I'm having now. I think it's because I'm on the spot and I've just routinely consumed it for so damn long. Is it 10,000 units, international units? I have a lot more than they say, only because the government have to tick a box, and so do I as a qualified dietitian. I can't really just flippantly say have this amount, but the government will have you have significantly less than what your body can deal with and what it actually needs. So I will just do the cheating thing and just confirm that. Examine.com is a great resource for people. Look at that, pass the exam. The true safe upper limit is 10,000 international units per day. Most people will be good at 1,000 to 2,000 international units of vitamin D3, right? So vitamin D3 is the biologically available source, the source of vitamin D that your body can metabolize and use. So I use vitamin D every day because there's clouds up all the time and I'm in an office all day. And otherwise, a good quality omega-3. But in terms of these multivitamins, just look and make sure that it's not. So a good one to go with is Health Span. Again, not affiliated with them. Health Span are pretty good with the quantities of vitamins and minerals in their product. All right, so thank you for mentioning that. And yeah, worth considering.
And say if you did buy a multivitamin and you looked at the back of it and it did have a crazy amount of your recommended daily allowance, that's not going to be harmful to you, is it?
Over time, you could put a little bit of strain on the kidney nephron. It's the part of the kidney that does all the filtration, glomerular filtration, as it's known. You could irritate that a little bit, particularly if you've got nephrotic syndrome, then steer clear of them, steer clear of protein supplements as well. But you'd know if you had that. It's unlikely to cause a huge amount of damage, but there are some long-term potential implications of over-consuming some. But don't be scared about it. Go out and get a regular supplement and just don't double or triple the dose of it. Just go with it. And you might find that when you have it, here we go again, is it riboflavin? Your urine is bright, luminous yellow. And that is proof that it's an expensive piss, because you're having too much riboflavin. But, or is it thiamine? Yeah. Anyway, it's too much of one, and that isn't what you want.
You get that with Barocca, don't you?
Oh, you're right. I don't know. I've never used Barocca.
Your pee will be bright orange.
Well, it could be a colourant coming out, but yeah, it's probably linked to that, and that's a sign. Yeah, but the chances are you're getting more benefit than harm from it, and particularly if you're worried about, if you're routinely just having toast a day and you know that your diet's nowhere near where it needs to be, you need to get on a multivitamin until you sort your eating out, and that's what I'm here for. That's what the forum's there for. Man v Fat. So, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So last question. David, he's asking, is there a way of overcoming a weight plateau due to metabolism slowdown from cutting calories?
Very good. Now, there's people out there who will discuss that your metabolic rate will only drop and slow down by 10, 15% at most, something like that. But there's other factors that come into play, like the thermic effect of the food you eat. So the composition of the type of food you eat can affect. So eating lots of meat sweats, increases your metabolism because of TEF, the thermic effect of food. So there's so many variables that come in here. But as a rule of thumb, your metabolism will downregulate. It's that bank manager analogy. Your bank managers, if you only deposit 700 quid into your account, and then you're spending 2.5 grand, eventually and you're consistently doing that, your bank manager's going to be on the phone to you. Hang on, you need to start putting more money in here. I'm not letting you take any more out. Well, that's your body saying you're not burning any more fat. Lipolysis and beta oxidation of fat is down-regulating because you ain't entitled to burn fat, basically, at the moment. And the question was, it's getting late, isn't it? You can see.
Is there a way of overcoming it?
Overcoming it. Okay, thank you. There is, not to reduce your calories too dramatically, first of all. So a 500 calorie deficit is about the place to start. If you're particularly overweight, we're talking, I don't know, I'm not going to quantify that. But let's say, for example, you're above, no, I'm not even going to go, if you know you're particularly overweight, you know, and you need to basically have either a 500 calorie deficit or up it to 1,000 calories. Now that depends. Someone who's 98 kilos, 1,000 calorie deficit might be a bit too much. What I mean by that is reducing your calorie requirements. Here's a little something to do. If you've got a pen and pad, just write it down. It's a rule of thumb. Take 30 and times your weight in kilograms by that. So whatever your weight in kilograms is, if it's 100, times it by 30. That's what your 3,000 calories or whatever, that's what your daily requirement is to roughly maintain your current weight. Now, your goal isn't to maintain the weight, is it? It's to lose weight. So what you do is you enter a deficit. You pull out 500 calories. So you have 2,500 calories. Now, that's from the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. That's a sort of rough guideline. It's a ballpark figure. We don't know. You could use the Henry equation. You could use the dated Harris-Benedict equation to work out your requirements. But we don't know what your exact calorie requirements are. That's something you have to learn over time. You're consistently losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, then you're probably in a 500 calorie deficit. You've probably worked it out quite well. So you just need to go around about 500 calorie deficit. Don't dramatically drop yourself down to sub 1,000 calories, for goodness sake. And that will stop your metabolism down regulating too dramatically. You can also eat foods which stimulate the thermogenic effect, like lean meats and fatty meats, like a good steak every now and then. Probably no more than 1 portion a week, 1 to 2 portions of red meat a week if you can. Fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, that sort of thing. 1 to 2 servings of that a week is ideal. But otherwise, exercise regulates metabolism and the act of eating itself, but you've got to be eating the right stuff. So, yeah. I think there's no real answer, no real specific answer that I can think of.
It's all trial and error, isn't it? And finding what works for you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and just don't give up. I think that's the message here. Don't give up.
That has to be the philosophy. That has to be the philosophy. You might not be getting it 100% right, but if you're cutting out the crap and you're entering a slight calorie deficit over time, you're going to lose your weight. And as long as you're not becoming malnourished because you're indiscriminately cutting out the good stuff just in the hope that you're going to lose weight quicker because of the peer pressure that your mates do it properly across the board, and the weight loss will gradually speed up over time because your muscle will go up and your fat will come down. And that shift in body recompositioning is favorable for continual fat loss. If you don't eat enough protein, enough food, your muscle goes down, fat, you see where it's going, it's sort of, your ratio is going to be different. And the chances of you sustainably losing weight at that point are next to none.
What about when you're getting older? Dan Ford's asked whether it's a myth that your metabolism slows down as you get older.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sure there's some biochemistry that says that your metabolism downregulates as you age. Probably because your lean mass, your muscle starts to come down, you burn less calories at rest. So total energy, TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure comes down. So that means your metabolism is downregulated slightly. So yeah, I guess so. Your metabolism will slow down also if you become more sedentary as you age. So the more you sit on your backside, which unfortunately through debilitation and whatever else elderly do, and yeah, so your metabolism is going to down. You just simply aren't expending as much energy, and your body composition is changing. So yeah, I don't think it's a myth.
Thing, isn't it? Just keep trying different things, find what works for you. There's going to be something.
There is, and that's the frustration of people though, because they know there's something out there that works for them.
Yeah, it's just finding what that is.
It is, but it's more. Look, eliminate get the base right, get that base level you're eating and drinking off, so that you know that, right, I'm going to have something every 2 to 3 hours over the course of a day. Because if you have something every 2 to 3 hours over the course of the day, as long as it's like, for example, some oats in the morning, scrambled eggs in the morning or something like that, handful of nuts, mid-morning time, the mid-morning munchies kicks in, you know, the triple M effect. Yeah, have a handful of nuts with a portion of fruit. Don't have the fruit on its own if you can help it, because, okay, you can. But ideally, have it with a handful of nuts, because otherwise you're going to get that sort of peak in blood sugar level. Not as dramatically as you would if you had a handful of Haribo, but the nuts combined with that reduces the glycemic response, basically. It sort of fills up the stomach and slows the rate at which that sugar enters your body. So do that every 2 to 3 hours. Then lunchtime, have a good source of meal. Mid-afternoon, have something. Dinner time, have something. And then mid-evening, possibly even have something just to offset that desire, like a protein shake or something like that. And that way, you're gonna keep those blood sugar levels nice and steady. No more peaking and troughing. And that's going to stop you feeling compelled to eat. That's a sort of way of looking at that, I think.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us and being our first guest. It was really interesting. And if you're watching this and you're thinking that you want to go over it again, this is going to be up on manvyfat.com and all over our social media, so you'll be able to watch again. And I'm sure we'll have you back with us, Tom, because you really know what you're talking about. It's really impressive.
Well, I'm going to Google half the stuff we've just discussed, and I hope. No, I'm confident I have it in most areas. Look, it's quite intense. Lots of trying to think about everything at once. And,
yeah, it's good.
Because I'm tired. I need to drink, I need to sleep, and I need to probably eat something. Then my cognitive function will improve. Anyway, I could waffle on all day. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys, for the question.
Really great. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you next month for another YouTube live session. Bye.